Well, welcome to See Here Love. I'm your host, Melinda Estabrooks. I'm so glad you've joined us for part one of our coast to coast conversations in Ontario. Usually we only do one show in each province, but this show in Ontario needed two parts as we talk about racism, being women of color, and how we have navigated through our challenges here in Canada. We talk about the challenges and the impact they have had on ourselves and our family. And then we talk about how we've overcome racism and how we have ensured inclusion in our own lives and sphere of influence. I know you're going to enjoy both part one and part two, but today is part one as we talk to Raquel Brown, Joti Wall, Stephanie Joy Styres, and Frances Kim, along with myself and co-host Miranda, about what it means to be a woman of color here in Canada. Enjoy.
You are seen, you are heard, you are loved by God. You're not alone, you're fully known, you are loved by God.
Well, welcome to See Here Love. I'm your host, Melinda Estabrooks, and thank you for joining us on our fifth stop in our coast-to-coast conversations in my hometown province of Ontario. And I'm so glad that you have joined us. And I am so glad, and you have joined us as well, all the way from BC. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Melinda. I'm really stoked for this show. Did you know that I was born in Ottawa?
Really? I had no idea. So you're like an Ontario girl, but just transplanted out west.
Yes. Yeah, so I'm super excited. I have so many family members out in Ontario. That was the first place we landed when my parents immigrated here.
Oh, I love that. Well, you know what? I have not introduced you in a while. And so for people who have just started watching our Coast to Coast conversations, I want to give a little shout out to you because you are the pastor of women's ministry at Village Church. You're passionate about seeing lives transformed by Jesus, and you love encouraging others to reach their full potential as they advance the kingdom of God in their lives. You're the co-founder and visionary at Leverage, a network for women in leadership. And you live with your husband, Carlos, your kids, Nathaniel, Hannah, and your mom. Where in BC?
We're in Surrey, BC.
In Surrey, BC.
A half hour out of Vancouver. Right.
So welcome. I love that you're here with us, Anne. Well, I'm going to now introduce our amazing panel, because what an incredible panel of powerhouse women. We have Raquel Brown, Joti Wall, Stephanie Joy Styres, and Frances Kim with us. So, Joti, where are you living in Ontario?
So I live in southwestern Ontario in a small rural farming community. We're about 2 hours south of Toronto, about an hour south of London, right on Lake Erie.
Amazing. So here's what I know about you. You are a wife, mom, artist, small business owner. You have a toddler son, and currently you are 7 months pregnant with your daughter. Yes. Congratulations. Woo!
By the time this airs, the baby will already be here. No.
You look amazing. Like you said, you live in a small rural community where I'm assuming your husband, you farm asparagus, bell peppers, and zucchini. Yum. You are a fiber artist, which I'd like to know about, and you love filling your days with gardening, experimenting in the kitchen, and playing outside with your son and your pet, I love this, your 2 pet ducks. And I know that you live in a rural community, but what do you love most about Ontario, since we are in Ontario now for the show?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Vancouver, and I only moved out here a few years ago. So I can't speak on behalf of all of Ontario, but specifically to where we live. And it's beautiful, very slow-paced living, wide open spaces. Again, we live right on the lake. And with where our farm is, we have our own private beach. So it's just stunning all around. And I've fallen in love with it. I love it so much.
Amazing. Well, welcome. I can't wait to hear your thoughts.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Raquel Brown, welcome.
Thank you. How are you?
Good. Where do you live in Ontario?
I live in Brampton, Ontario. It's just outside of Toronto, and I have lived in Brampton for pretty much my entire life.
Okay. Well, Raquel, here's a little bit about you, which I just love. You're a wife, mother, educator, and most importantly, a follower of Jesus. You are the founder of Empower and Equip, whose mission is to move our village of faith into action by challenging and empowering churches and parents with the tools that they need to be, I love this, the loudest and most influential voice in the lives of our children and youth. You have 20 years of experience. And I love this, Raquel. Your goal is simple: to empower and equip God's people with the tools required to help our children know, love, and serve Jesus Christ. Powerful. Wow. Amazing. I'm so glad you're here. And what do you love about Ontario? Brampton, or just Ontario as a province as a whole?
Well, I would have to say the cultural diversity. I'd have to say that growing up where I did and living where I do, I get to come into contact with people from all different cultures and ethnicities. And I think that's important. And I really value that. Now, I haven't really traveled extensively outside of Ontario in Canada. So I don't know if that's true anywhere else, but I know that it's definitely true for where I am. So definitely the multicultural, diverse backgrounds that I get to work with and live near and around.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Raquel. I can't wait to hear your thoughts as well throughout the show. All right. Well, next up, Stephanie Joy Styres. Stephanie, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much.
And where are you living in Ontario right now?
I live in beautiful Six Nations of the Grand River Territory.
Oh yeah, beautiful. Well, Stephanie, I love that you're here. You were born and raised in the beautiful Six Nations of the Grand River Territory. Stephanie, you are of the Mohawk Turtle Clan, and you're the president CEO of Marketplace Solutions, Inc., a First Nations consulting firm that specializes in community revitalization, business coaching, and corporate social responsibility. I mean, your bio is huge. I love that you also have experience working with government funding and grants with Indigenous Affairs and Northern Development Canada, Youth Employment Strategy, and an Aboriginal Human Resource Development Strategy as well. So welcome to the show. What do you love about Ontario, Stephanie?
Ontario is a Huron word for Great Lake. I love that. And I also love that there's so many waters here, waterfalls. I especially love Niagara Falls. I love the sound. I love the look. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. And I just love the land. The land is so precious and sacred and beautiful. That's what I love most.
Beautiful. I love that too. Thank you, Stephanie, for being with us. And finally, to round us all up, Frances Kim, welcome.
Thank you.
Frances, where are you living in Ontario?
I live in a small town called Woodbridge, just north of Toronto, about 25 minutes north.
All right. Well, Frances, you're the director of Envision, which is really interesting. It was really neat to learn about this. It's a resource of the Christian and Missionary Alliance denomination that helps to identify and develop future missional leaders who innovate, establish and strengthen communities of faith in key urban environments. And you're heading that up. I love that. You used to serve on a pastoral staff at your local church, leading pastoral care and administration. You're married to Randy, of 2 children, Timothy and Amelia. And this is what I love. You enjoy thrift shopping. Yes, who doesn't love that? Creating warm and inviting spaces. You're always open to trying new experiences at least once. And you give great care to raising this next generation of young creatives and influencers. Amazing. Welcome, Frances. And for you, what do you love about Ontario?
Well, I'm thankful it hasn't been said already, but I especially love the CN Tower. And it's not just because it's the 3rd largest tower in the world, but also because that's where we got engaged. So my husband gathered our 2 families. He got a plane and hung the banner, and it's a personal, it's a personal memory and milestone for me. So that's what I love.
I love that. That is fantastic. Well, I live in Burlington, so this is great. Like, we're in Ontario. I live in Burlington, which is outside of Toronto, but I love it because it's in the middle of like Toronto and like Niagara on the Lake, Niagara Falls. And I think I would echo really what Stephanie was saying too, and Joti, about, well, all of you. The diversity of people I love, because I love eating out with my husband to all the different kinds of places for food. So one night it's Vietnamese, one it's Thai, The next is Korean, then it's Ethiopian. I mean, we just love exploring and eating great dim sum and all kinds of food, which I love in Ontario. But I also love the land. So you can go to Niagara on the Lake and Niagara Escarpment and hike, but then you can go up to Muskoka and be in cottage country. But then you can go across to like Prince Edward County and love the lakes. And I mean, it's so beautiful. And for my husband and I, we love doing day trips. So we'll go and explore towns and best drives, scenic drives. If you ever Google, you can say best scenic drives in Ontario. And we do that too. And I just love the expanse of the land, the beauty of the landscape, and the people. So amazing. I agree with you all. Well, today is a really timely discussion. And as you see our beautiful and diverse panel of women, and even myself and Anne, you know that we're going there with these topics. And I think it's really important as somebody who has been doing this show for 4 years and in medium broadcasts for close to 20 years. This is really, I have to think about the first time I've really done a focused show on the challenges of women with color that we have faced in Canada. And I'm really, really excited and thoughtful about this show. And so I'm so thankful that all of you are here today as we discuss some challenging things, but also I know that we can give hope in the areas of our struggle and challenges. And so the first question I want to ask you all is, what do you love about being a woman? Now we're representing all kinds. We have a Jamaican woman. We have a Mohawk from the Turtle Clan woman. We have an East Indian woman. We have a Korean woman. We have a Filipino woman. We have a Middle Eastern woman. What do we love about being that woman today? Frances, I want to start with you. What would you say?
Yeah, I was thinking about it, and part of our culture, I mean, obviously with every culture, we come from rich history, lots of family-oriented, collective culture. But for me, unique to me also is the multi-generational factor. I would say out of the last 10 years, 8 years have lived in 4 generations within one home at various points in time. And that's a unique part of living. And so I've had to navigate through, what is my primary role? Is it daughter, granddaughter, wife, parent, community contributor, leader, all at once sometimes? But the other answer that I would say that's unique to being a Korean woman is just mastering the secret in our language. It's called nunchi. It's almost like a sixth sense of being able to read the air, read the room, notice things before you speak. And it served me well over the years. There's actually a book now that's out, written by a Korean author, called The Power of Nunchi, The Korean Secret to Happiness and Success. So that's just one thing that comes to mind, a couple of things.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Frances. I love that. Raquel, what about you? As a woman today, what do you love about being a woman?
I would say, specifically as a Black woman, this may sound strange, but I would say my hair, and I'll tell you why. For many years, my hair was chemically straightened for many different reasons. And I think that my hair has been in its natural state for about 17 years now. And it's almost not like a sign of protest, but it for some it is. But for me, it is almost one of the most tangible ways that I'm able, and visual ways, to embrace that Black part of me. And I know for a long time when I was younger, for many reasons, again, I would straighten my hair. And I was actually told when I entered my profession that I should straighten it because straighter hair is more palatable and more acceptable, and I would possibly go further faster. So I would say, for me, it's my hair, and I've actually passed that down to my daughters, both of my daughters. I have 2 daughters, 16 and 13, and they both love their natural hair, and they know why it's important. So that's what I'd have to say for me.
Yes, I love that. Beautiful. Thank you, Raquel. Joti, as an East Indian woman, what do you love about being this East Indian woman?
I feel like mine is maybe a little bit, maybe more superficial, but in all honesty, Raquel mentioned something similar. Like, I grew up in a very traditional home. So even though I was born and raised in Vancouver, you wouldn't if you entered our home, you would think you were in India. Like, my parents are very traditional, very strict, and always made a point of making sure that we were really connected to our culture growing up. So growing up, my sisters and I, we were obsessed with Bollywood films, and we would, stand in front of the TV and dance like they do, and, wear the outfits. And when I thought about this question, I thought, really, like, I feel like a princess when I'm all dressed up in my Indian clothes, and I feel like royalty. So being a South Asian woman, one of my favorite parts of that is being able to dress up and to represent my culture and to feel beautiful and to feel empowered in that sense.
I don't think that's superficial at all, Joti. I think that is a beautiful part of us. God looks at us and it's beloved, right? Princess, the one who I love and adore, and I dance over and I rejoice over. I mean, that just brings that kind of, I want to dance as I say that, right? Oh, we'll have a dance party after this, you guys. Don't you worry. We're going to be dancing after this. Wonderful. Thank you, Joti. I love that. And what about you as a Lebanese woman? What do you love?
Yeah, I would have to say it's like an innate hospitality that is embedded in the blood of the Lebanese people. So me too, like growing up in Canada, I can't really speak the language. It is really interesting because I can speak Spanish fluently, but not Arabic. So even with loss of language, I've still been able to maintain there's this part of the culture that is hospitable. I just think of like anybody who has entered our home, my mom would have like showered them over with hugs and kisses and fed them to overflowing. There is just there's nothing that compares to it. She's like, eat. It's like the other love language. There's so many different love languages. There's a sixth one for Lebanese people, and it's called food. And so we just like however much the table's like full, you can't even see like the table anymore because there's so many plates on it. That's how much they're showing like love to the other. So yeah, that's probably one of my favorite parts for sure.
I would say for Filipinos, it's a bit of all. I think for Filipinos, the party, it's funny. I love throwing parties. I found out in one of my personality testing, my number one characteristic is woo. It's wooing people to something great and to the party and to something exciting. And that's what I love is I love bringing people together and whether that's cultural, but I've known other Filipinos who love that. They love bringing everybody. You don't just invite one person to something, you invite everybody and their family and their cousins and the hairdresser and anybody who's connected to you. You want them to party and enjoy life the way that you do. And I think that's something beautiful about, I think for me as a Filipino, and just culturally, when I meet even a Filipino on the street, it's big smiles. They always just smile and there's just something warm about them. So I love that. And I will say this is sort of a funny thing, but I actually love being petite. I am under 5 foot, though I did lie over the years that I was 5 foot, but I really am. I'm outing myself, 4'10" and a half. I just wear lots of high wedges and heels. And I love that about me. So there's the honest truth about being a Filipino woman. I wanted to set that up for all of you because I think it's important that we embrace and love who we are and our nationality and our background and what our family has brought to us. But on the flip side, I know that being a woman who is Black, Indigenous, East Indian, Korean, Filipino, and Middle Eastern Lebanese has not come without its challenges. And so I want us to talk about some of the challenges that we have faced in Canada, just from our own experiences, because I want it to be really honest. I think you're going to be voicing some challenges and concerns that many of our viewers and listeners have been faced with. So Stephanie, let me start with you. Some of the challenges, let's just go one or two challenges that you have faced as an Indigenous woman.
Right now, thinking as to what I've faced and what I've been through and working with a lot of Indigenous people, youth and adults, I see a lot of people applying for apartments and maybe not getting an apartment because of who they are. So you know when you go in and that someone is not allowing you to take an apartment because of who you are. So another one is in government services. I have people who go in, I've gone in on some occasion, where they don't accept your status card. However, when you go to their website or you see something like a poster in their organization, you see that that document is a legitimate document, yet they're not accepting it. So those are some of the challenges that I have faced and I have seen in my line of work. But I've also looked at solutions as well. So.
Wow. Stephanie, thanks for sharing that. They're big. Raquel, for you, the challenges you have faced in Canada?
I would have to say two things come to mind. The first thing is having two Black children and not being able to find resources in terms of books and things that where we are represented to have those things in our home easily. So I can find them, but I have to pay more and search harder to find that representation. And that's been challenging. And I would say the second thing is, as an educator, knowing that the history that I'm paid to or mandated to teach erases my people from that story, right? Black and Indigenous people are not present, and having those challenging conversations with colleagues about that, and as a teacher, figuring out how I can navigate that myself, and then as a mom. So I would say those two things have been two challenges that have been the most painful to navigate, but I've found my way through them a little bit.
Wow. Thank you, Raquel, for sharing. Joti, the challenges you've faced in Canada?
Yeah, I guess a few things come to mind. The top two are probably, first, I think I can speak on behalf of a lot of first generation Canadians who again come from more traditional backgrounds. When I say that finding your unique identity, growing up in such a multicultural country, but going home to a very specific, strong culture and traditions has been kind of a common theme, that struggle throughout my entire life, trying to find my unique identity by being raised by two cultures, essentially. I entered university. I actually went to a Christian liberal arts university, and it was predominantly white. And that was a shock to my system, because I constantly, all the years that I spent there, I felt like I stood out. I knew I stood out, and not in a negative way necessarily. I'm really grateful. I don't think I have ever experienced any overt racism. But I know to some degree I was given certain privileges in this predominantly white university that others weren't. So representing the school at speaking engagements, being the face of the university in many cases, because they wanted to show that they did have diversity. And again, not a negative thing necessarily, but it was still a thing. And it's funny to me because now I live in a predominantly white community. I could count on one hand the number of ethnic minorities that live here. And I feel a similar sense of, I walk into a grocery store, I walk into the post office, and I'm always the only minority. I'm always the only person of color in those situations. And again, not a negative thing, it's just a thing. Secondly, I am actually married to a white man. And so marrying my husband was a really big deal. And being the first person in my family, like my entire generational line, to intermarry with someone, to be with someone from a different race was a really big deal. And yeah, there's just been a lot to navigate through that for sure, and learning. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Joti. Those are some things that I'll mention for me that have come up same and similar. Francis, some of the challenges you've experienced.
Yeah, I can also identify with what Joti shared, but more from my childhood experiences. So we moved when I was 8 years old to a very small town of 1,000, and our family was the only non-white family. My parents owned the home hardware there, and my sister and I, we were the only non-white kids in our school. And so those were very formative, shaping experiences where I just desperately wanted to fit in. So from what I packed in my lunches to who I brought over, there was just this this innate desire to be like them. It caused definitely some subconscious, very subtle but very prominent ways of adjusting and coping for that over the years. And so even now as an adult working in a very kind of a diverse society, living where I am right now and seeing a lot more ethnic representation, there's still a huge gap. And so navigating through that and the struggle of dual identity, for sure, I completely resonate with that until I became a believer, and I'm still wrestling through that. But the identity that we have in Christ, how does that come through even beyond our own ethnic culture identity, and not losing out, but embracing fully who I am as a Korean as well as a Canadian. So yeah, lots of navigating to do still.
Good. Wow. Well said. And just some quick thoughts there before we go into some of the impact of what about for you as a Middle Eastern woman? What have been some of the challenges that you have faced?
Well, I think first and foremost, I have a camouflage, like I can camouflage with different cultures. So there's that part too, where it's like, what are you? And then when we actually start to have a dialogue, oh, so you're not Latina, you're not, what Portuguese, you're not Italian, you're not this, that. And then okay, so then what is that? And then especially in my community on the West Coast where there isn't a predominantly, Middle Eastern community. And then the jokes come, and so I think that's some of your terrorist background, what is that all about? And so I think that some of, again, I haven't been denied opportunities because of my race or anything like that. I just think it's interesting. Like Joti said, it's a thing. And so to be able to embrace that and go, okay, well, how do I then react to the thing? And what does that mean then in a church setting too? Mm-hmm. So I know we're going to continue this dialogue, but it is interesting. And many of us have, experiences within the corporate world and within outside of the church, and what that experience is and what is our experience within the church is an interesting conversation.
Yeah, it's good. I think the thing for me, I came to Canada when I was 13 and never knew about racism or anything different because I grew up in communities where it was very diverse. All my friends were either from the Middle East or from Japan or from the Philippines or wherever. It was just very multicultural. But I think for Filipinos, when I first came, immediately, because I was adopted and my family is white, they immediately thought I was the helper and maid of the home. And they were very clear to say that to my parents to their face. Oh, so you have a maid and helper in your house. Now, as a young girl who never even thought of that, I am Paul and Diane's daughter. The assumption based on being Filipino and my skin color made those people say that and assumed. It was also difficult. I was a young brown woman that has big personality and would speak, my truth and say things and kind of loud but confident. And a lot of people didn't know what to do with that. What do you do with this loud Filipino woman who will not back down in a meeting or in a boardroom and goes after what she wants? That's not what the typical Filipino woman should be like. And so in the church and in my workplace, always, I will be honest with you, always sort of a bit of a fight and push to be at the table, to have my voice heard. And so that has been interesting to navigate through. And I can sense that some of the experience of some of you as well. Well, I hope you enjoyed part one of our show here in Ontario as part of our Coast to Coast conversations. And I hope our thoughts and our stories were inspiring and encouraging for you. But stay tuned for part two coming up next week as we conclude this show on overcoming racism, what it means to include everyone within our spheres of influence, and how our faith in God helps to inform and navigate our decisions. We'll see you then.